reflecting on acceptance seems just makes me think of how important it is in relationships to accept other people. This is also interesting, as it seems to be the foundation of practice of mindfulness. If we can accept people, other people as they are, this is the beginning of a relationship. If you judge people, then it's as though you can't even begin a conversation. Communication can't happen because our minds are filled with how this or whatever that's not right, with a judgmental mind. If we're judging other people, then we can't even begin the conversation. We're not listening. We can't communicate. You could say, perhaps, what comes first in a good relationship? Is it communication? Or is it the willingness to listen? That willingness to listen comes from the willingness to accept the other person as they are. But it also comes from accepting ourselves as we are. What can we give in a relationship to other people except ourselves fully? If we can't accept ourselves, we can't be ourselves. We can't be honest in a relationship. So we have to begin by accepting ourselves in order to establish a relationship based on honesty and trust. We can't, if there are things we can't talk about because we haven't accepted them in ourselves, then there's no basis for communication. There's no basis for honesty in a relationship. So we have to be honest with ourselves. That's the foundation of. How do you work backwards on this? You have to work backwards to that. We have to learn to be honest with ourselves so that we can be honest with others. And it's not something that's easily done. Because without awareness, we don't really know. We don't really notice the deceit and dishonesty that we live with. Now we deceive ourselves, thinking we make so much up about who we are. Or the stories that we believe are the stories we tell other people. We believe them ourselves. We haven't learnt to meditate. We haven't brought them into mindfulness. We don't know. We haven't allowed them to arise. We haven't allowed them to manifest, to see them clearly, and to realise that we're making it all up. So this is why acceptance is at the foundation of mindfulness, the willingness to accept whatever arises, so that we can see it clearly. This realization that I'm making it up is really helpful. It's a real step out of these fixed positions that we hold, a way out of what we can call fixed views, but these are views, these things around which we think where we're coming from. I could say this is who I am, but it's really where we're coming from. We're coming from these fixed positions that we found that we have made up in a way. We've made up the stories about who we are. But we've never learned to penetrate them, never let them manifest and be seen clearly. Because out of this conditioning of how we should be, we don't look at how we are. We're so busy trying to make ourselves into how we think we should be. So full of denial around how we are. Just letting that in, manifest. It's not difficult to do if we don't interfere with the mind. We just allow it to be. The mind will reveal its own truth. It reveals its own delusion, but when we can see it and understand it, we realise we're making it all up. And I find that very useful, that little phrase, that reflection. I'm making it up. It comes when one of the core teachings Ajahn Chah would often use is, "Are you sure?" Not sure teaching. So this is that challenge, isn't it? Are you sure? And it enables us to investigate. Well, is it just a story? I'm making it all up. So we can use that in our meditation. Are you sure? When we think, I shouldn't be this way, I should be like that, we can say, are you sure? It's not like this, it's because it shouldn't be like this. Are you sure? And when I said acceptance is the foundation of loving kindness, you can see how that is. Because to really accept ourselves is incredibly joyful. And it's not, because none of this is of any real importance. That's why I was saying in meditation, whatever arises, it is of no importance. Whatever we call it important, we've created that. We've given it that importance. And things are just what they are. They have no intrinsic importance in themselves. Thoughts are thoughts. Feelings are feelings. They have no real significance in the context of mindfulness. They are simply objects of awareness, which the importance of mindfulness is to be aware of the experience of these things, not to make anything out of them. So we turn things into things with a capital T, but things are just things with small t's. They just come and go if we let them. We don't interfere. But since we give them importance, we interfere with them. We step onto the slippery slope of our preferences, of wanting it to be like this or not wanting it to be like this. It's like a slippery slope. Once you step onto it, it's very difficult to get it off. With the practice of mindfulness, we can train the mind just to observe things, see them. We don't have to jump on to the slippery slope of preference. We can just let them be. And that way, the mind kind of, it's like peeling away. Things will arise, they'll come, they'll go, they'll manifest and they'll disappear. We can understand the nature of the mind. We don't interfere, so the mind will reveal its truth to us. But in fact, it reveals its delusion to us. The truth that we see is the seeing through the delusion of the mind. That's what truth is, seeing through delusion. So we realize we're making it up. It's a story we're telling ourselves. When we see through these stories, we don't believe them anymore, then we've begun a conversation, if you like. We're beginning to learn how to listen. We're beginning to. The possibility of honesty is there. We don't have to make things up anymore. That's the really good foundation for a relationship, because if we can be honest about ourselves, then that really helps other people to be honest with us. And often this honesty comes out in very simple ways, like, if we can be honest about how we feel, and another person might think, oh, gosh, well, I can share that too, the way I feel. And that's a possibility. So it's interesting. I just can, how fundamental the path of acceptance is, how it is a foundation practice of mindfulness, how it helps us to be more, have more, what's that word? Integrity, I suppose. And that then spreads outwards. And that, we talk about loving kindness, but in a way that's also the same thing, isn't it? That acceptance of ourselves, acceptance of others, being the expression of loving kindness. That acceptance brings with it an acceptance of how we are, but also brings with it an integrity of acknowledging that, how we are, and then an invitation for others to acknowledge the way they are too, so that we can have start to communicate on with relationships can begin. But if we can't begin there, if we don't begin there, the relationship's like it never quite starts, never really has a foundation to true. And I'm not wanting to say, this is a gradual path. So developing relationships is a gradual path too. So it's okay to if you think, oh, well, if I'd have If I were to start this relationship now, I wouldn't have started, it'd be different, because 20 years ago it was like this. Now it's like this. That journey of a relationship has taken on a lot, takes on a lot of the baggage of the journey, doesn't it? Yet there's still that possibility there of transforming relationships. I mean, we know that the best relationships, if you like, are those we call kalyana mitta, the relationships that are founded on what we call a beautiful friend, a good friend in the Dhamma, in the sense that to find someone, like as we're gathering here together in this room and in this sphere, Zoom world, that's our relationships are based on an interest and willingness to support others in the Dhamma. So that's a really good basis for a relationship. But that is something which somehow can be still transformative for people who've never heard of Buddhism, because of the way we are. We can be, if we approach our relationships with honesty, that's transformative. We don't need to say, because, I'm accepting you because I'm trying to be a Buddhist, a good Buddhist. I'm accepting you as you are. But yet that transformation of our own way of being will affect and influence other people. It's incredible, because that possibility, that honesty with which we can approach relationships enables others to open up towards us. It just removes some of the baggage, and it just makes that possible. It doesn't mean it will, but it just makes it possible for others. But what we're bringing is a willingness to communicate in that way, and that invites others to respond. It doesn't necessarily work. But on the other hand, from a karmic perspective, this is another way of looking at it. We're not adding any baggage of our own that has a karmic consequence. So we're, in a sense, untangling, or disentangling that what we want out of people. We won't want anything from them. That's a massive, amazing thing. If we don't need to manipulate other people to become something for us, then we can see why that would be a good basis for a relationship. Not needing to manipulate others. When I was young, I would manipulate people all the time. I didn't know anything else. I thought I had to make people like me. I wanted people to like me. I wanted people to think, perhaps to think I was good at my job, and that I was. So I would manipulate people to hide in a way. I wouldn't want them to really see me as I was. I want them to see something else, something that I thought they might want, and might like. Try to get the job. I would think I ought to try to be somebody else, because they wouldn't want me. They wouldn't want me. They'd want some other thing that I thought this is what they would want to employ. They couldn't possibly want to employ me. And this need to manipulate comes back to a lack of self-confidence or a lack of connecting, an inability to connect with who we really are, thinking we should be somebody else. Which goes back to many times being told whatever it wasn't good enough. So we knew we weren't good enough, so we had to be somebody else. And so our opportunity in mindfulness and practice and meditation to really disentangle the assumptions of the self-critical mind enables us just to connect with, it's like this, it's good enough, however it is, to accept ourselves. We don't, there's nothing that's not, there's nothing wrong. We think that we should be somebody else, but actually there's nothing wrong. I don't know. When I never found anything wrong. When I looked inside, I couldn't find anything that I couldn't accept. You could say the hardest thing was to accept was the stories I'd made up about myself, and I'd tried to convince other people and the damage that I'd done. But to accept that even then I did that because I didn't know any better, because the conditions were the way they were. That's why I did it. That's how it was, and that is acceptance, isn't it? We don't have to have done everything right. We can accept it because that's how it was. It couldn't have been different at the time because the conditions were as they were. I was as I was. I said and did those things because I didn't know better. If it could have been otherwise, it would have been otherwise. It wasn't. It's how it was. So we even can accept things from the past that weren't right. We don't have to condone them, but we can accept. It couldn't have been otherwise. And so, but the importance and the wonder of it is it's brought us to where we are now, that moment, the present moment, which is possible, where we can accept, we can transform, we can be honest, we can let go of the delusion, the story that we're making it. That's possible. So that's the joy of that, because all the past led up to where we are now, and then this is wonderful. So I don't think there's anything we can't accept. So I'd like to offer that for reflection. I'm funny feeling that although I might be plugged into something that is actually not switched on, so just bear with me while I go and double check, because I think it's telling me the battery's a bit on the low side. Yeah, that's all. Thank you very much. Small technical issues. Please, has anyone got any questions?
I can say something for myself.
Thank you.
Something that I better remind myself from time to time is to accept my own reactions to what is happening as well. It is so easy to be carried away by those who don't like something and something needs to be done, whereas just recognizing it, accepting it, and still do what needs to be done, never mind the feeling times. And I need to remind myself of that often.
It is. The present moment's always now, isn't it? So even if it's the present moment is, I've done it again. I've said it again. I've got that piece of cake in my hand already. And I didn't need another one. I said to myself I didn't need another one, but there it is. It's already in my hand. Well, how did that happen? And we do that moment of mindfulness. It happens, it's always there. And so it doesn't matter where we are, even if it's not where we thought we should be. We can say we shouldn't be here, but it's where we are. It's where we begin from. Well, it's the present moment, it's where we begin from. It's not where we ended up, if you like. Yes, it's true we ended up here, but it's a beginning. It's a beginning, not a criticism about how we got here. Someone sent me a little text message. I'm really keen to hear any direction. Oops, let me go into that message box. What a long text. I'm really keen to hear any direction in how to further our practice and knowledge of Buddhism. I find I need some structure or routine or some form of accountability. Classes, regular places to meet. When approaching something new, or I lose momentum, any tips greatly appreciated. So I'll read that again. I'm really keen to hear any direction in how to further our practice and knowledge of Buddhism. I find I need some structure or routine and some form of accountability, classes, regular places to meet. When approaching something new, or I lose momentum, any tips greatly appreciated. I think the significant bit is I find I need some structure or routine and some form of accountability, support. Someone who's beginning their journey, Buddhist journey, and finds that they need some support, some structure, some routine. In fact, it doesn't say support, it says I need some structure or routine, some form of accountability. Brackets, classes, regular places to meet. So yes, this is coming here is exactly that, isn't it? It's only once a week, but it does bring a structure and a routine and a support and that opportunity to hear reflections on Buddhism. I haven't, for someone who's new to Buddhism. In fact, there's a beginners group, isn't there, that Buddhist Society runs, and Introduction to Buddhism, which is an 8-week course.
8 or 10
8 or 10 weeks.
This is
the
Thursday group.
In the Thursday group, there are other places to go for an introduction to Buddhism. It's a broad introduction, isn't it? Theravada, Mahayana, different schools of Buddhism, and the fundamental core teachings of the Buddha. And of course, that is, we're all learning. When do we get past the beginner's stage? The introduction to Buddhism. Because those core teachings, the core teaching of the Four Noble Truths, there's no end to learning that. The depth of that teaching. So it can seem like a formula at first, And these formulas are a kind of support, so that structure. The Buddhist teaching is very structured. And those structures of formula, like 4 Noble Truths and 8-fold path, these are really supportive. The 5 precepts. You can investigate. Buddhism is full of structure. The Buddha taught in a very structured way. And that really is very supportive for people coming new to Buddhism, I think. And of course, I realise that you learn, just learn more, becomes a deeper understanding. So I don't know. I didn't, I attempted to teach this evening in a structured way. That's not what I've set out to do. It's much more about just what's come to me, my experience, what seems to be particularly helpful and relevant, to have been particularly helpful and relevant to me, and making the connection between mindfulness, meditation, how to bring that to the relationships, how that it transforms our life. So that's kind of the theme of this evening. Yet another time, or in another place, a real structured course of Buddhism. Like I'm happy to teach. I can teach Buddhism in a structured way. So then, as it's kind of, I think, a follow-on from this. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry I am on that course. I've gone on the wrong link. It was the last class this evening, and I'm on the wrong Zoom. How ridiculous. I apologise. I wondered why it was just meditation tonight. I'm so embarrassed. Oh, sorry everyone. That's not beautiful. And that's really lovely, because it's just like mindfulness, just what I've been saying. That feeling feels like this. This is the fundamental teaching of Buddhism. It's like this. The 4 Noble Truths. Life's not perfect. We end up on the wrong course. It's so easily done. So really, it's good fun. Let's see what happens. And that's really great. So I hope that you don't have to leave us. Please stay around. We've only got another 10 minutes. I hope some of what I've said has been of some value.
Martin, if the person wants a book, there's a good book by Bhikkhu Bodhi, which I think is called In the Buddha's Words, which I would recommend.
Yeah,
They want a bit of knowledge and structure.
Stephen's just recommending a book, In the Buddha's Words by Bhikkhu Bodhi, which you might find that useful if you haven't come across before already. Has anyone else got any questions?
Hello.
Hi, Aileen.
Hello. Aileen, yes. Mine was also quite a practical question, linked with that, because I'm fairly new to this as well. Where do I obtain the books that you're chanting from, etc.? Can you let me know where I can get those?
Where do you... There's the chanting book? So
yes.
There's a good website called Pujas Live, Pujas Live.
Puja's Live.
Yeah, Puja's Live. Pujaslive.
Okay.
Also the
Amaravati.
Yeah, if you go into Puja's Live, it's a really nice website. It's got the chanting book, but it's also got all sorts of other talks and things. Another place to go is to Amaravati Buddhist Monastery. If you go to the Amaravati website, you also have a chanting book there.
Yeah.
So there are those two different places. Both good.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So you can practice now, so it'll be perfect after the summer break.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Mm.
Thanks everyone for your help.
Anyone else?
Martin, can I just pick up on something that you said about, being open and just oneself instead of pretending to be somebody else? I completely agree and take that on board, but I feel like in conventional reality, in real life, sometimes you need to put on a certain persona depending on what circumstances you're in. And I think for younger people particularly, it's, they need to be a certain way, they need to so-called get on in life. So for instance, an example would be, if you're advising a young person, I'm thinking for instance of my own children, I feel that they're not bringing enough enthusiasm to their job or kind of not speaking enough in meetings or whatever, I would say, well, you need to be like this. You might actually not be very interested, but you need to project yourself as an enthusiastic member of the team who wants to move ahead. I think for some people it comes very naturally, and you can see that that's just how they are anyway. But with others, I think it doesn't come so naturally. So I think there's a little bit of a contradiction in real life when you go out into society and the expectations that people, employers, others will have of you.
Yes, it's a journey though, isn't it? So I was just like that. So I was presenting myself as a person I thought people might like or might offer a job to, or to try to be the thing in the like you're in a meeting, and so you think, well, I'm supposed to be like this, or if I'm supposed to be responsible for this, I've got to pretend to be responsible. I've got to pretend to be a responsible person because that's what's expected of me. I don't really care, but I've got to pretend to be responsible, and that's and we do that. But how much of our lives are we going to devote to that? And how many years? 10, 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years? How long is it before we let go of the pretense of being somebody other than we are? Because there's always that there's a disconnect there. If, let's say, because this is it's like a slippery slope. It's not something that's easy to get off. Once you start pretending to be somebody else, it's quite difficult. You can you believe the story. I mean, it's not really who you are. Now, I'm really saying, so many people that have a career change and find, wow, I wish I'd done this so much earlier, because they realised that they were pretending to be a good whatever it was for all this time, but really it wasn't them. Yet when they changed their career to do something which was more in connection, more genuinely connected to the heart, if you like, then they were so successful at that. Whereas when they were working hard to try and be somebody else, it never really worked. It took them so far, but it can only take you so far. That's what I'm saying. So I'm not saying I knew this when I was young. I spent most of my career doing something which I wasn't really. I just did it for the money. I didn't really believe in what I was doing, and I was pretending to be somebody else. And then I lost my job, fortunately, and this is what happens when you're made redundant. you've got the opportunity to do something else. Think again. And I've decided to be more. I considered what were my values and found how would I find an organisation that fitted my values rather than me trying to change my values to fit the organisation. That's a really valuable exercise, and it's amazing. And suddenly you're appreciated, and you're much more committed, and you're much more appreciated. And it's, for me anyway, that's how it worked for me. I couldn't believe how, in a sense, how successful I was. And I didn't want to be successful, but that was just because my values were aligned to the organisation I was working for. So I moved into a charitable organisation, and I was still an accountant, but I was more aligned with the values. As an organisation that had values, so that I could, because I could support those values, then I found I was wanted by the organisation, and my ideas were wanted and appreciated, and so then I could start to be more as myself, if you like. And that doesn't mean that I still made the right choice, because I'm still an accountant. I don't know. I think I think accountants are people that don't really know what they want to be. They chose that because they couldn't think of anything better. They do it for other people. They oil the wheels for other people to be successful. That's what accountants do, but they don't actually take any credit for it because they just help things work for other people. But then that's very valuable, because if you can make a charity be successful, or if you can make it something that's really a very useful organisation, something work for the betterment of society, then that's very useful, being that oil. Yeah. So, who knows?
If I can say something, there is, it seems to me, there is also the need to play roles in life, but then if we carry on believing, as you said, in the role and getting stuck in it, then it is going on. Whereas we might have to play it for 5 minutes and then leave it behind and back to yourself.
Mm.
It is a balancing act.
Oh yeah, and it's a continual journey and learning. I so much to learn. I mean, I'm now retired, so it doesn't. Of course, that's the benefit of it. It really doesn't matter now. And whereas it did matter when the stakes are high, you've got a young family and they really depend on you, then it's very difficult to. Yeah.
In another way, if I can, that helps me is the frame of mind. If I see what I do as a service, freely done, because I am retired myself now, and that is a blessing. Then a lot of pressure comes. You don't have to perform. It is just a service.
And it's so much better. It's so much better. Nobody really wants, because what you discover is nobody really wants you to be anything other than who you are. They didn't really want any of this stuff. It's what they thought they wanted. But what they really want is, well, I mean, because we're not really the person that stays in bed all day and doesn't go to work. That's not really who we are. I'm not, that's that's a different. That's something. That's not. If we feel like that, we're not doing the right job. We haven't found it yet. It's a job that makes us want to get up really early, because we want to kind of rehearse the day before we get into it, because we really, we know that we want to be ahead of that meeting. We're on top of it, so we're really ahead of that. Because we're enthusiastic, and that gets us out of bed. If we're lying in bed, if we can't get up in the morning, that's not the right job. So I think the finding it's not easy, but I think it's really helpful to young people to encourage them to find the their own a way that really connects with their sense of what's really their passion is. I was going to say who they are, because we don't know who we are, but that where that passion comes from, where that passion is, because that's what they'll be successful in life doing. I mean, it might still, you still might have to teach them how to get through the interview. You might still have to give them a few bits of interview tuition, to get them the job that they should have. But that they'll at least align, they'll know what direction. It's a very difficult question. What is that? To find it for ourselves. So that's a challenge. It's a really worthwhile challenge. And the young people, I think, have got that. They're much more able, I think, to know what is, to find that passion than we are when we're older. I think, because when we're older, we've forgotten what, can forget what brings joy, because we got so used to accepting, the way things, going to work, just doing it, going through the performance of life. But when we're young, we can really, I think that's, we have the potential to find that, to be really, find a direction. So it's worth encouraging the children, I think, to be true to themselves, I think, in finding their direction in life. Not to just do it because they think that's what it's supposed to do, or that's what they think people want. Thank you for that question. It's a very difficult, very interesting one. We've reached the end of our time, so I think we should bring it to a close and chant the closing homage, which might be on page 29 or 39, I'm not sure which. Oh yeah. 29. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Thank you, Imogen, for sharing the chanting book with us. Thank you everyone for joining, especially KH, who, I don't know your first name, but KH was the one, she came to the wrong group, so I hope you found it useful. And this is the last evening for the term, so we start again in September. I don't know exactly the date, but watch out for that. Message coming to you from the Buddhist Society to tell you when we start the new term. So have a good summer holiday. And bye for now.